Okay. Did that answer your question? I know not the way you wanted it answered.
Correct.
I understand that part too. Excuse me. Any other questions on question number 2? Okay. Hearing none, let's move on to question number 3. Did anybody need clarification on question number 3?
I did, and as I recall, I asked the question, which is the subject of this response. So, to be quite honest, I don't feel the response answers the question that I posed, which is that I am really looking for a classification, if you will, of the East Lyme system with respect to the requirements of the minimum budget requirement. So, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are basically there are basically 4 possibilities. You could be let's say, an alliance district, which we are not.
We're a non-alliance district.
No,
Yep.
this is correct.
You could have alliance, non-alliance, or non-alliance district special circumstance.
Right. We are not a newly formed regional district, so that
Nope.
rolls that out,
Yep.
eliminates that rather. Then the other 2 possibilities, which was the subject of my question, is do we fall into category 1 or category 4? And category 1 would allow for the budget, for you not to be bound by that minimum budget requirement if you have an accountability score index in the top 10% of
Yep.
all districts in the state.
We're about 30th in the state.
Okay.
We're not in the top 10.
Okay, so that rolls us down to the 4th characterization, which is that you basically use the prior year's budget and then you adjust with your ECS grant money that you've got either up or down.
Yep.
Okay.
And as proposed right now, ECS is supposed to go up next year, but the governor's proposal shows it to go down. There's been no final
Right,
answer on that yet.
right. I have some figures that were rather current on that. Yeah, that'll be finalized as time goes on. But the reason for that is, and it seems a little academic, but in my mind it's not, because it's always good to know where we stand as a board, and what our dollar limits are in terms of
Sure.
cutting your budget.
Yeah,
And
makes
you
sense.
need to have that understanding of what you need to do year to year.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not in that top 10% and, then you need to abide by a different set of rules. So I just wanted to clear that up, and I also wanted to clear it up for the public, because that question comes up very often. And so I think it's important for us to know, where our capabilities are in terms of oversight and budget review, and where your requirements are in comprising a budget. So that was my the rationale for my inquiry.
So to be equally clear, it's unlikely that we're going to cut their budget. We may decrease the growth of their budget, but we're probably not going to cut their budget. That's another sensitive, just comment that you just said. That's one of the things that a lot of times people say, you cut our budget, and the answer is no, we decrease the amount of growth.
Okay, well.
2 different things.
Okay, semantics, Bill. I'm
No,
sorry.
No, not
God, no.
semantics.
God, no.
No, they're not. Very big difference.
So Anne, based on your research and based on your understanding, then we cannot cut the Board of Education budget below what it was approved at last year unless the education cost sharing grant is decreased.
Right.
That is the only circumstance
Right.
under which we would be able to go to a budget below
Right.
what was
And-
approved this
and
year.
the numbers get extreme when you start doing the math, so I've already done the math and I can tell you that. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of what you've requested, if you want to use it, in my terminology would be what you've requested and what we are able to have oversight on, and to suggest a cut or a reduction, then that's correct. And of course, there's other factors that could go in. If we had to close a school, or where there was a drastic reduction in our, in student population or something like that. So, yeah.
That's a great point, and especially if there's questions out there in the community.
Yes, and I mean, that is
Yeah.
people don't ask me about the MDR, but in essence, they are asking me about the nature of your budget. So I think it's an important issue that I'm glad we have resolved.
So So I was just gonna, just add that, say that was a very good question, and I think that in the future, just like some of the other things like the pie chart request and so forth, I think having a little section explaining exactly where we are each year with respect to our projections on the MBR is a really good thing to have
Sure.
in the budget. We've never done it.
Mm-hmm.
No, we haven't. It
Yeah.
hasn't come forth.
No,
It hasn't-
Yeah.
I've never, heard it as a concern, so thanks for bringing
Okay,
bringing it
sure,
forward.
sure.
It's because it's Anne's first year to really look at it.
Yeah.
She likes to dig into that kind of stuff. All right, any other questions on our MBR question? Which I didn't even know existed. No more questions on number 3. Move on to number 4, grants. Is there any question on the grants that are listed in the attachment?
Well, I did have one on that, and I think this was also my question. So, I see there was in your presentation document and in your slides, there was a reference to a reduction in that excess cost grant. And then, but I didn't find in your budget figures, your year-to-year estimate, I didn't see a change in that document. And I also didn't see a change, the state is not proposing a reduction overall in excess cost grants, the most recent information that I found. So I was just curious as to why that suggestion or that point was made that you anticipate this reduction.
So that's the,
16, 17 versus.
I think it was 200,000 and change, if my memory's correct.
next
Let's go
question.
back to that.
It was on number
Question.
5, so I think the answer on number 5. So, yeah, and
Yeah.
number 5,
Number 5.
the PowerPoint used the difference between the 16-17 and 17-18 grant that we received.
Right.
And then the budget book that you received had 18-19, and then my projection for 19-20, which
Okay.
correct stated, I think I'm just gonna open it up, but I believe it was 375 for, I'm estimating for this year, and I'm estimating for next year 375, again, I believe.
So I understood that. I guess, yeah, it seemed to me that, I mean, maybe are we falling in some sort of limbo where, let's say, your transportation costs and your other special ed costs are going up, but you're not getting to that point of the 4.5 times per pupil cost. So you're really not going to be able to capture some kind of a reimbursement? Is that what you anticipate?
Well, that's
'Cause-
why I for
So-
18-19 and then 19-20, I left it the same, because we didn't get word that the governor was gonna cut anything for ECS. But that number is also contingent, as you state, on the students, what services are provided, whether they hit that cap, whether a student that we had previously in the district moves out that was an excess cost student and perhaps leaves, then we wouldn't have that grant money. It could be replaced with another student that's under that threshold, so it's a varying number.
Okay, so in your mind, that's your best estimate, is what you're
It's my estimate, so for
suggesting
example,
to me.
we received, in March, or beginning of April, about 258, 260, which represents, I think, 75 to 80% of the excess cost grant based
Okay.
on the December report.
Mhm.
There is a report filed in March, at the end of March, so then we will receive the balance of, based on that report, because again, you have students that may move or may change, and then we'll get the other 25%.
Okay,
I don't,
all right, thanks.
so it's again,
It's-
my
so
estimate
your
based on
estimate.
what we received.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions or comments on questions 4 and 5 as they're combined? Since you're both talking about essentially the same thing, or relatively related things. Hearing none, move on to item 6, Creative Play School. Were there any questions about the response to question number 6 on Creative Play School and the attachments that were attached?
This is the first year we got a revenue sheet from you guys, right? That I remember seeing? Okay, so that's,
think so.
Yeah, so that's a good thing. I guess that's why I was thinking, I can't lay my hands on it though. Where the heck is it?
I think it was, it's probably
I'm
attached.
sorry, I have it here, but it's like,
It's
Well,
attached
it's
to your
attached to
questions,
the
I think,
packet.
Lisa. Yeah.
oh, is it? I don't wanna take yours if I don't have it. Oh, no, that's not it.
But no,
Okay,
it's on the back
thanks.
side.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so, yeah. All right, so I look at all the before and after school care, the Flanders, Haynes, and Niantic, and integrated, and the projected balance at the end of this fiscal year, it seems to go down quite a bit for the next fiscal year, except for Creative Play School. I know there's a real obvious answer to that. What is it?
So this year, we're using some revenue dollars out of the before and after care programs and integrated preschool to buy some technology items that are not covered under school construction. And I can get you those specific items, so those are being funded through there. And then we also anticipate funding some equipment next year that we have cut out of our operating budget with those dollars. So that's why you see the decreases.
So Creative Play School, though, you probably just answered this, but I didn't get it.
Okay, no, I don't think I did. Why
That was-
they're not
that's
going
before
down?
after school.
Those
Creative, creative uses their, the revenues to, purchase different supplies. It covers the cost of their staff as well. So,
Okay, so that's sort of, well, where's,
And they're a play school program, it's a co-op program. There's not the same requirements to fund items of technology and equipment as there is for our integrated preschool and our regular school, as opposed.
so in this sheet, in this book, am I gonna find $142,000 of revenue projected in here?
No, because.
Why is that?
Because they're separate, special, it's a special revenue fund. They're program oriented. So for example, if we, middle school, for example, the aftercare at the middle school and the before care, we ended that program. We weren't,
Okay.
we didn't have enough participation.
Yeah, whatever, you're done with
So
it.
exactly.
Okay,
The
okay.
same thing with all of these, with the exception of integrated preschool, obviously, because there are requirements for the peer level, and Kim can explain more of that. But if for some reason any of these programs, we start having low level of participation, or
Right.
we feel that there's not a need to run the program, we just end that
they
program.
disappear, yeah.
I get
It's a
it.
student activity fund,
Yeah.
it's not part of the operating budget.
Mhm.
If things start to, if we don't have the participation, it's never going to hit our operating
So the
budget.
staff that runs these programs, are you counting them in here as staff?
They're not part of the operating budget.
No, they're not
At
part
all?
of,
No.
no,
Okay.
no, they're being entirely funded by the program.
That's right.
And that's why sometimes, and perhaps on that staffing sheet, for next year, we'll separate it out. So if you have a lot more students going to the before and after care at Flanders, we do need to increase the staff because you have to have an appropriate staff to student ratio, and vice versa. If you don't have the participation, then you reduce the staffing, but it's all funded through the revenue.
So there's where, class case next year, you're gonna have different sized schools with redistricting, so there's gonna be some changes that will come forth with that, given the size, there's 100 more kids at Niantic Center next year.
So, if I could.
You can?
With the exception of Creative Play School, which is a cooperative, and we can talk about that a little later, but the other programs, especially the before and after school care programs, so, beside yourself, Mariana, who is like running or managing those programs? And I would understand that maybe Board of Ed is setting rates, is that correct?
Yep, we set rates. Amy Drown, our assistant superintendent, we have a
Okay.
coordinator. She works directly with the coordinator as far as the programming and making sure the staffing levels are adequate and so on.
Mhm.
And Kim
and-
does the same thing for
Correct.
creative as well as the integrated.
Right.
We
Okay.
just had a meeting recently where we worked with some of our Board of Ed members, looking to set and increase rates potentially for next year.
Okay. And on that, question of, being sort of revenue raising or revenue-driven programs, I mean, I assume you've had those conversations. I mean, it's not just what's the going rate for before and after school care, but, you know, if it's some sort of a revenue driver in your budget, I know it's separate and apart, and you're using it for these other items that may have disappeared and you were able to buy things or get services. But I guess my question is just, because looking at the numbers, I'm thinking to myself, not so aggressive here with, you know, with revenue raising, but I'm not sure exactly, you know, what snapshot I have. So just wondering if that's on the, if that's, is that in the cards for the future, or relook, or?
You mean to increase?
Yeah.
You mean to increase rates?
Yes.
So,
Well, we just had the discussions regarding creative and integrated as we're looking at rates for next year.
Okay.
And there's, you know, nothing's finalized yet, but there's a, you know, proposal to increase those.
Okay.
Amy, before after school, has been any discussion in relation to the rates?
We do it annually, every year.
Has it been done
Okay.
yet, though, or have they had those discussions yet, or no?
No, we do it at the end of April.
So it's coming at
Okay.
the end of April
Yeah.
then?
Okay.
Thanks.
Can we just go back to talk about the revenue line here? I feel, I need your support here, guys. You still have excess revenue here.
Well, keep in mind too, you need startup costs at
Right.
the beginning of the next year.
Yeah, I don't
as
even
well.
care if it's $5,000. The point is, from an accounting standpoint, there's revenue here, right? That's greater than the cost. So I feel like it should be shown in the budget. Help me
Those
out.
are-
What
those are
what am I
stu-
missing? Wait, let me, if you don't mind, just for a moment. What do you guys think of that point?
So this goes back to my original question, how did we hire 10 people last year, and where did the money come from? And I think this answers it. It's a self-contained program where you're charging fees that generate revenues, but the expenses for that program are also not hitting their budget.
So it's another
So-
enterprise
Yeah.
zone.
Yeah,
So
so
what
it's
do
not
we
coming
pay?
out of
The
operating.
taxpayers are not paying for
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
service, so I'm good with that.
It's like another one of these enterprise zones that
Hmm,
self-funds
very
itself.
similar.
Yep.
Right, so if
Yes.
the expenses for the salaries, for example, aren't hitting our budget,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with that.
I guess I just wanted to know if there was excess revenue, then that's important to know.
But what did send a little flag up,
Because it's not gonna be all a wash all the time.
but what did send a little flag up was that money, excess funds from those accounts are being spent on technology, and I think I heard that's why the technology budget, has gone down this year, but I didn't see that it went down.
No, it's going up.
We don't.
It's going
Right.
up. I mean, it's minimal. I think we say technology, we might have purchased, I don't know, three ProWise boards, or, you know,
But
maybe a
it's-
couple laptops
Laptop cart.
for a laptop cart for,
iPads.
yeah, exactly, iPads for some preschool students.
But this technology that you're buying for, or is completely for this program, it's not for any other purpose.
No.
Is
For
that
the-
correct?
It's for the students. It's for, these are,
For
to
this-
what I had started to answer your question and why you don't see it in this. These are student activity, what's considered student activity. We can only spend these funds for anything related to student activities. So obviously, we can't spend it on other things other than, so iPads that are being used by the students in class, laptop cards, ProWise boards. I'm trying to
But it
think
has
of
to
other
stay in this
things.
program here?
In this
It-
program.
it's-
The
well,
after
it's
school.
just, that's what the program dollars can be used for,
Oh,
for
okay.
student activity.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to stay in that program, Lisa, but we can't, just take it and go offset electricity if we wanted to, or
Mhm.
something
Yeah.
like that. We need to use it for items that are going to be used by the students.
Okay.
So,
Not necessarily in that program.
correct.
Okay.
We have, we are currently using, is it 15%, Amy, of, we've made a commitment to spend, on enrichment activities for programs within those, for those students attending. We use 15% of the net dollar amount that was used last year for enrichment activities, but mainly it goes for the payroll expenses, supplies, and then we have used some for equipment. And for next year, we're using it for some equipment.
Okay,
Yeah, that's
I
just-
understand now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so does that answer question number 6? Ready to move on to 7? Boards of Contingency account. Is there any questions about the fact that the board does not maintain a contingency account? Questions on 7? Moving on to 8. Capital plan for 1920. Is there any questions about the capital plan for the Board of Ed?
Well, how do you want to handle that? That's another, is that a breakout, if you will?
It's a question about whether or not we understand what their expectations are for capital. When we get into conversations about the capital, since it is town capital, it's not a standard, it's not a standalone Board of Ed capital.
Well, it is right here, right? They have their own,
Which, it's in,
they have their own capital
is it in
report.
the book or is it in one of these
Yeah,
other?
no, it's in the book. We got handed it out with the town. It's the first year that they provided it to us, because we asked them for it
Yes.
last year, a detailed capital plan, and that's what we have.
It's this page that I got this thing.
It's probably with the town capital. So I just wanted to know if you wanted to, I guess, maybe discuss that at the end, or,
If there's any questions for the Board of Ed about the capital plan that they presented, I don't have it in my book, but that's okay, I'll find it here.
So
somewhere.
I guess one thing to point out would be the discussion that we had earlier with regard to the vehicle acquisition,
Mhm.
$50,000.
right, but you
Right.
took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
Well, no, you don't, go ahead. I just,
Nope.
I wanted a little more background on it.
Nope.
What's the $50,000 vehicle?
We need a new maintenance truck. From what we heard, that ours completely died. It's not worth repairing. It's about $6,000 or $7,000 to repair it. From what I heard, the town might have, if they get one, they might be able to pass one down to us. We borrowed one graciously, Park and Rec allowed us to borrow one this past winter for plowing. It was excellent. It worked well. So hopefully, they can pass one down to us and that will cover it.
And that would be removed.
Yeah.
So Joe gave us a, I don't, he must have worked with yours, one of your designees
Yeah, we've
on
been
this.
having meetings, quarterly
Yeah.
meetings.
Okay, so I'm looking under Board of Ed on this. I don't see anything, maybe he omitted it inadvertently, but there's nothing highlighted on here that says something is looking to be replaced this year.
I don't know what you're looking at,
Yeah.
Lisa. Yeah, is that Joe's? I don't have a copy of Joe's. That's not ours.
Well, you can, I mean, you can, take a look if you want. I mean, we're all friends.
This came from.
He handed it out at the last meeting. So we're trying to get to a point where we have a list of all the vehicle assets of the town. So and it's organized by department.
Yep.
So the Board of Ed list is there.
Okay.
So which vehicle are you looking to,
Oh, let's see.
and I'll share with you while he's looking at that.
So he doesn't have any dates for any of these.
Let's just do this.
Right, he populated his probably, so he
Yeah.
doesn't have dates for theirs. So we're gonna
So
have to
if you
guess.
can't answer it right now, that's okay. I
So
mean,
it's
I-
not, you know, we can take a,
Yeah, it'd
I'm
be
just-
better if we go back, because we have a vehicle list as well, I just don't have it in this pile. So we can go back and look at our list.
Okay.
'cause, you know, I just would
Yeah.
like some backup to it. It's 50,000's a lot of money, trying to understand.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And
What-
we were
what-
kind of on hold with that, based off what was gonna happen with the, I thought, at a previous Board of Finance meeting, I think it was on the agenda, then it got kicked off. So we were kind of waiting to see what was gonna happen with
Well, this
that.
isn't the
No,
super
th-
cab. This is
No,
a-
when we
this
buy
is-
one of the other vehicles,
Yeah.
what Joe said is he was gonna take one of the vehicles that are being replaced and flow it downhill. And not to say Board of Ed is downhill, but
Wait, we'll take it.
their oldest vehicle, Joe's oldest vehicle is newer than the Board of Ed
Yes.
vehicle that's gonna be
Exactly.
replaced. So it's that whole trickle down kind of, run everything till it rusts off its foundation and then put another 2 years into it. Okay, so one of these line items is probably that line item. We can try to get some clarity to which one is which. Okay. So as far as line items on the capital the capital plan for the Board of Ed, is there any other clarification questions?
No.
Yes,
Oh, you,
if I may.
You may.
I know you explained this during your presentation, but if you wouldn't mind just recapping again the capital item for the sidewalk repairs, the middle school? You had mentioned, could you recap that? That's $50,000 this year.
Yeah, between
Above.
both the middle school and high school have some issues with crumbling, some steps in the back of the middle school, areas behind the high school as well. Sidewalks are becoming deteriorated. They haven't been touched in years. We were going to work with the town and tie it in with what, work that Joe was doing around town to help us fix those areas as well.
Okay, so that sidewalk has nothing to do with safe passage to the library? That's in the back of the middle school?
The senior center library? Which
Yeah.
side? No, that's where, that's Lily B. Haynes School. Middle school, the one further up, nowhere near the senior center. It's in the back of both buildings, really,
back.
and some in the front of the high school
The
as well.
steps going up to the
Like where the
tennis court.
planetarium is, yeah,
Yeah.
tennis court area back.
I know those
yeah.
concrete steps
I
are
just
pretty
think we
beat.
wanted to make sure there
Exactly.
was no rework in
Yeah.
terms of any work that we're doing at Haynes.
Oh, no. No,
You know what I
nothing at
mean?
the
We're doing a lot of
elementaries.
digging, maybe it would be
Nope.
best to wait till that was all done.
Oh, yeah,
At least I
definitely.
know that was my concern, I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, this is solely middle school, high school,
Okay.
and hopefully we can tie it in with the town's projects.
Yeah.
Same thing with the crack ceiling for the middle school. We want to save that parking lot. We don't want to have to tear it up and put in a new one anytime soon. So if we, in working with Joe, he recommended, we get it crack sealed. It'll last us hopefully a number of more years. So we can tie it in with their projects that they're doing.
Okay. Any other questions about the Board of Ed's capital plan? Question 8, we're done with question 8. Move on to question 9. Board of Finance feedback on aligning major budget factors in our presentation for project codes and budget books. Who asked that question? Does this question look familiar from anybody?
Which one are we on?
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9? Number 9? Sorry.
I think that was.
No one wants to own it.
Okay, so I don't understand the question, so I don't understand the answer. Well, I understand the answer is it's under advisement.
There was a there was a comment about, not having within our presentation, trying to match the presentation numbers with what, the object codes that were in our budget book. So that was, I don't know who said it, but
Okay.
we'll work to add those to the presentation.
If the Board of Finance gets a new accounting system, is the Board of Ed gonna be tied into that?
Yep,
Okay.
we're working together on it.
That's one of the things that we're, in our learning,
Yeah.
in the learning, well, that system in the past, I've always felt was a waste, that we can just get an intern to come in and feed the beast
Yeah.
a lot cheaper. But as I look at everybody's piles and piles of paper, and everybody's got their own organization, yeah. Okay, sorry, off my soapbox. No more questions on number 9, we'll move to number 10. Questions regarding enrollment.
So I have a question on that.
Go ahead.
So this sheet that you emailed out
Yeah.
later.
Yep. Thank you for that feedback. We missed that one.
Yeah,
day,
it's
so
just a
we
little
fixed that.
typo, I just wanted to make sure. So we have a 3/31/19 enrollment, which I assume is an actual.
Yes.
2717. But when we looked at what you guys handed out in your packet, it says 2817. Is that a typo?
It could be, that's the problem with that. That's why we gave you all of Malone and those are estimates too. Those aren't actuals. Those are estimated numbers that came from previous year.
All right, well,
they're
so-
not gonna be, you've got estimates there, you have actuals here.
Okay, so, and that's important, because
Yeah.
this looks like we're going up 118 kids,
Yep,
where this looks like we're going up 18 kids.
exactly. And what you see there is
So-
the high, in this, take a look, remember this Malone and McBroom, we gave the full breakdown of all the
Right.
numbers with medium, low, and high. Yep, that's the high projection, just so you see the
Oh, so
possibility.
this doesn't say
right
high
there.
on here.
I
When I
mentioned
look
that
at
during the
the-
presentation,
oh.
that we took the high
So that was-
projection.
That was a little misleading for me. I
Well,
mean,
Okay, I'm sorry,
I just
trying
would've
to make it
used, I
clear
would've
that it was-
used the average for the trend. It doesn't even say
Yeah,
high on it.
Okay, thanks.
I think the answer is it doesn't matter, because when I read the narrative from last year, you were projecting a decrease in 50 students. It's my opinion, after trying to get my head wrapped around student counts, it's an estimate. It's plus or minus 20% probably year to year, how accurate you are.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, are we increasing or decreasing? I can't even tell that. I can't even tell you this year if we're gonna grow next year or we're gonna decrease next year, and I don't think anybody can. And I think each year you try to point to some more data, but it's like, nailing Jello to the wall. It's just like, it's,
What we give you is actuals from what October 1 gave us to what it is now,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
gone up 18 kids
So it's gone up 18 kids since
Yes.
October.
since October 1.
That is atypical.
That is yeah.
during the course of the year to go up that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would
That's
expect.
atypical.
I would expect most people that move would move in if they
That
can
could be
between
a-
school
that
years.
could just be a sign that says enrollment might be.
Yeah.
Or it could just be a
Higher.
random point of data, next year it goes down
It could-
50
it could-
people. It's not a trend, it's a point of data.
Right. I just don't remember it going up by 18 kids.
Yeah.
Okay, so, understanding that calculating kids, estimating kids year to year is as much of a art as it is a science. I think that's the answer to that question. And as much as you want to point to different databases, I don't think any of the databases are more accurate than the data that's in them. And it's trying to guess who's going to like East Lyme next year. And if they're going to have kids, and if they're going to have 2 kids or 4 kids.
If I may, Lisa asked a very good question during the budget presentation in that how confident can we be in Malone and MacBroom's numbers, right? So if you look at what actually happened versus what they predicted last year, they were off, if you look at the low end of the projection, 44 kids versus a high projection of 83. So what am I talking about? For 18-19, they projected total enrollment 2774. And so we actually have a lot less than that. So when we look at the future projections, 28-17, and we say, oh my gosh, we're gonna go up 118 kids next year, right? You have to take that with a grain of salt based on what the predictions were earlier and what they actually ended up being.
Yeah, no, we can tell you too is in question 11, the next one, what their confidence interval is, that we called them directly, and that's the variances there.
You wouldn't surprise me one bit if you came in here next year when the population went down 100 heads and you said, we never would have projected that. It's just, I got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I guess what I wanted to get from this is where I was going. I was looking for actual numbers, and it doesn't even have to be our school. I was looking for them to provide their projection for Tommy's school system. In Tommy's school system in 2010 to 15, we expected their enrollment to be just at 2,100, 2,132, whatever the actual projections were, because we have projections from them. And then we would have seen what the actuals bore out. And then we would have had a sense, and I'm not criticizing them or anything, but we don't have any tools to help us understand statistically how accurate these projections are. And we keep talking and making a lot of financial decisions around projections. And I understand that if we looked at another school system and saw what they did, there's no guarantees, just like the stock market says, past performance is no guarantee of future, but it still would have given me some assurance at how projecting enrollment for students, how accurate that science can be. And I don't have that information.
yeah. Okay.
As I'm saying, I would have liked to seen this chart, you don't have it, I'm sure, but I'd like to see what this chart would have looked like in 2012, right? We would have been able to say, how close were they to projections? And that's what I was trying to get at when you said, what are you gonna do with that data? Dr. Tim said, what are you gonna do with that data if we give it to you? It's gonna give us some confidence that there's a plus or minus 50 head count wrapped around these estimates. I think,
And that's where, the point I was trying to make also is that the administration is being extremely tight with staffing shifts. And that is, when we see a decrease in the middle school or a decrease that's coming in the high school, they are responding to that decrease with reducing certified teaching staff, okay? So what they're doing is they're basically staffing for what they see today, not for what might occur in the future, okay? The data that we used from M&M was the big part about saying what we should do with the 3 elementary schools. That was really the big part, but in terms of the tightness and agility that Jeff was using with the district in terms of staffing, so we're being extremely responsive to what we have today, and not holding on to resource to say, well, we may have a need, we may have a big need next year, and we just don't know.
And that was my point during the debates about the school buildings, because that was the first time you showed us a population increase. The previous year, you showed us a population decrease, and I'm like, and it's like, okay, so we understand that the population has got a margin wrapped around it, and we're not real firm with what that margin is.
I have a question for clarification for Dr. Hagan. What you just stated was pertinent to the elementary and middle schools, or are you also saying that it's relevant to the high school numbers?
Up to the high school numbers, too.
Because I'm not seeing that. If I look at the historical data for the East Lyme High School certified staff from 2015 to proposed 2020, it's right around the same number, 107, 108 certified staff. But if I look at the enrollment for the East Lyme High School for the same period,
I'm really just talking about what's proposed for the coming year. And that is, they've looked at it and the numbers, and they're projecting that the numbers are gonna go down, and they've got a reduction of 3 certified staff at the high school. I'm talking about what we're doing today in terms of trying to be as responsive to what the data's telling us.
I guess I don't.
We've done that in the past, a
right.
little bit with the middle school too.
I just don't see the reduction of 3 in
On this part.
For next year. Yeah, there's high school level.
Are you looking at the
Certified
corrected
staff.
sheet?
East Lyme High School dropped any certified staff.
You're going from 110-10 down to 107.
I tell you,
Okay.
Just a
that
minute.
Okay.
is, that is.
That's 1 year, okay. But it's the same amount of staff that we had in 2015, and if you look at
I'm not talking about that, I'm just talking about what we're doing.
So this is
what
the
you're
first-
seeing. No,
so-
I'm just stating the fact that what the administration is doing in this budget is trying to be extremely responsive to what the student enrollment numbers are saying.
For the
I'm
first
talking about
time-
the history, I'm just talking
right.
about.
So for the first time this year, you're trying to be responsive.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, that's what I'm insinuating, because if I look at,
I'm saying, I'm just making the point, that this budget is being very responsive to what the staff was.
relative to last year, but if we're down 150 kids, right, and we have the same amount of staff that we did 5 years ago, it's not
I feel.
I see your point.
Thank you, Lisa. I mean, we see enrollment has gone down 150 kids in the high school in the past several years, but the
Where you-
staffing,
But where are you looking at that number, 150? You're going off of Malone McBroom's projection, aren't you?
no, I'm
Where are you
going off
looking?
of actual numbers.
From
At-
what, Kim? From where are the actual numbers? Oh, you're looking at this staffing FTE? No, what are you looking at?
It looks like that.
Yeah, you said enrollment, so what enrollment are
Data.
you looking at? I just want to make sure you're not using projected enrollment numbers of Malone and McBroom, because we haven't given you any actual numbers from the past that I know of.
Oh, I've gotten them every year from you.
Enrollment numbers.
She keeps it in her spreadsheet.
Oh, okay, so I don't know what you're talking about, that's why I'm asking.
Okay.
I don't know what you're looking
And
at.
I misspoke, it's not 150 because I'm looking at total students, but if I look at the high school population, in 14-15, there was 1,085 kids, and this year you're projecting 1,021. So that's a reduction of 60 kids.
I don't know if you're talking apples to apples too, because you got the AIM program, you got outplay students, this isn't apples to apples, right? Yeah. But I have to, I guess, look at what you're looking at.
I was just gonna say, the other point, in the past, sometimes we've come in, the numbers have come down, but would say it's very difficult to reduce staff in response to 10, 15 kids drop to high school because you're eliminating, specialized teaching staff. So I'm just the point is that I'm just trying to make the point that we're trying to be.
And let me just
Well,
try to
yeah.
make the point that I'm acknowledging that this year you're trying to manage your head count of student population.
Yeah.
And if you would like me to have a separate meeting with you and talk about the trend over the past 5 years, you'll see what I'm talking about, and that this is the first year that I recognize you're trying to do that. That hasn't occurred in the past. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, I disagree, but that's fine. I understand what you're coming from. Not knowing what you're looking at and knowing what we've tried to do each year is to, if there's a need for a reduction, we don't just sit and leave the staff member there. It just doesn't work that way. That's not how we're being fiscally responsible. Okay.
Okay. So I think the high school enrollment is documented in this chart here. And I think that does show the decrease from 12 to 19 that Camille was trying to convey. This,
Yeah, and that's projected. That was done
No,
last
he's talking
year.
about the past.
2012 is not projected, right? The black line is actuals.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, if 20, yeah.
So if I go back
Yeah, okay.
2012 to
Yep.
today, then it shows clearly a trend downward. You want to debate about whether or not
No,
it's plus or
that's-
minus 10 or 20, that's fine, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah.
clearly a trend that's
Gotcha.
showing from 1162 down to about 1040, something like that.
Yep.
And the staff from here to here is 107.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is
Yeah.
it this shows
So in the past
the
year,
numbers you're trying to show?
Yeah, just keep in mind, a reduction of 20 or 30 kids spread across umpteen classes and umpteen areas. You get one minus kid in one class, two minus kids from another class, that's not gonna give a need for a reduction of a teacher. So maybe
Understood.
it's spread across, a school of
Understood.
1,000,
but we're talking about more than 60.
But from 12 to 20, it shows rough order of magnitude, about 120 less students. So I mean, I don't know exactly the number, but it's about
Yeah, we'd
120.
have to see what the total
And there was an
count
increase in 3 staff over the same period. So, I think
Okay.
that's your point.
So the point being, I think, is that we're trying to, again, find that trend that I described earlier that shows staff and student population kind of trending. And I think what we're seeing is that although they might be trending, the admin staff is increasing and it kind of gets washed out. Okay, any other questions on number 10? I think I'm on number 10, yeah, I'm on number 10. And number 11, I think, goes with 10.
We kind of talked about 11 already.
So we're good with 10 and 11? Okay. If we can move on to number 12, include staffing, personnel, data tables, been staffing
that was
change
the
districts. So,
Mm-hmm.
are there any clarifying questions for 12, or is that also included in 10 and 11?
We just discussed it earlier, Bill.
Was the staff-
Okay, yep, okay. Number 13, healthcare costs. Can we not have any healthcare, no, wait, that's not what it says. So you speak a little bit about what you're doing to contain healthcare costs. Do we want some clarification in that?
Well, let's see, this question is kind of an extension of question 2 on incentivizing, and it seems like you're speaking with respect to your teachers and contractual employees, and that there are some positives in that you have this health enhancement program and et cetera, et cetera. A question I have generally is, well, last year in the fall, there was the addition to the Board of Ed budget. Townside experienced it as well because of the skyrocketing health insurance costs. We had to amend the budget, basically. So where are we, this is going to be a question for Anna at some point as well on Townside, but on Board of Ed side, where are we with any of that? I mean, is there anything looming there that we need to know about? For this, yes, like,
year?
are we in the red, in the black, in that regard?
Yeah, Anna, we're all tied in together, so we always
Okay.
look at the claims as a conglomerate of
Okay.
everybody together.
Okay,
So, I don't wanna speak for Anna on that, but.
So when Anna reports to us monthly the healthcare trends,
She
she's
can-
reporting both Board of
Okay.
Ed and their
Total, yep.
town.
okay, very good, okay.
So the
yeah,
Connecticut 2.0 that we've talked about in the past and all that will all
All
be
right.
included.
That's fine.
Okay? Is that it for number 12? Any other questions on number 12?
I think that was
think
13.
it's
I
13.
think that was 13.
Oh, that was
Bill.
13.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody got to keep me on this. Thank you. 13, any other questions on 13? Ready to move on to preventative maintenance, item 14, and the attached spreadsheet.
So I have a question on that. I looked at the attached spreadsheet, and there's a line item in there, and all I see is a repeat of that row in the spreadsheet. I don't see any supporting information on that. Can you help me out with that?
No, it's not a repeat, so I added, so what I tried to total, in the budget book, object 330,
431.
wait, 431?
Yep. Question 14.
Oh,
334, 31,
oh, sorry, wait, did I, hold on.
You've included the right data on this, on the spreadsheet, but
Okay.
there's no explanation of why it went up $74,000 for preventive maintenance.
Because we reclassed the 151, so in contracted services maintenance, 330. That decreased by $151,000.
Mhm.
We moved items that had initially been classified under contracted services or ground supplies from contracted services because they didn't properly belong there. So items for ground supplies are not a contracted service, they should be in ground supplies. So they had previously been budgeted in 330, the same with preventive maintenance. So the facilities director, intern that we have, felt it would be best to classify the expenses in the accurate.
Yeah.
So do you want to know the specific
Well,
items that were
ground
moved?
supplies, I'm just trying to understand it, because preventive maintenance is usually testing things on some periodicity
Correct.
to, right?
Correct,
Ground
elevator
sup-
maintenance, things like that.
Right, so ground supplies, to me, I'm not sure how that's preventive maintenance. I'm not trying to get
But
too.
I'm not, but that didn't go to, so ground supplies, you asked why preventive maintenance went up 74,000.
Correct.
So it went up 74,000 because we took 74,000 from 330 and moved it into 431. Ground supply is up 60,000 because we took 60,000 out of contracted services maintenance and moved items that were previously budgeted there into 615. So the two items together, which I think we actually, in total, I'll add them up for you.
We're just basically moving them to the right.
Yeah, I get it, you're putting them in the right bucket. I just was trying to have an understanding of what we're,
So do you
Doing
want
for 100
specific items?
well, I mean, I just wanted to have some idea of what that is. I mean, but
Well, I can,
It's all
while
right.
you go on with the other ones, I have the spreadsheet and I can tell you what items were moved.
I see how you're rebucketing them, I get it. I just was, in my own mind, trying to understand what was
Sure.
121,000 for PM and stuff. It seemed a little stiff to me. But
Okay.
it is what it is, I guess.
But wouldn't the question be, is the combination of those two accounts, the money that's moved from one account to the other account?
Well, they're not gonna be exact, right?
No, but it's just, I mean.
There's the two items, there's a decrease, so.
So there's 130 increase here, 151 down.
Correct.
I get it. I understand you're trying to reallocate it to an accurate bucket. I just didn't understand.
so
I
the
can look
s-
up some sample items
So
for
the
you.
$74,000 increase is actually a $20,000 decrease, if you take all the buckets
The aggregate.
combined.
16,000,
Yeah.
correct, 760.
Okay, any other questions about item 14? It does not sound like we want an itemized list, thank you. Item 15. Why is object 112 non-certified gone up 20,000? Any questions about the response? Hearing none. Question 16, athletic costs.
So, yes, I have a couple comments, questions.
Okay?
So you said one of the initiatives that didn't go forward this year was the math tutoring. And I heard you guys express concern about our increasing gap in math proficiency with our elementary school kids. I'm kind of thinking if we can afford to put $773,000 in our athletics budget, I guess I would ask you, do you consider athletics more important than math proficiency?
A big chunk of that is for transportation, it's not just.
Okay, whatever,
So,
I don't,
yeah.
it's
Just
sort
to
of
be clear.
immaterial. The point is, if that's how much we value our athletic program, I guess I would just ask you guys, are you comfortable with saying that we're willing to spend that kind of money on athletics and we're gonna do away with our,
I mean, I would say back to you, Lisa, we value a full and well-rounded experience for every child.
right, right.
Is what I would say back, yeah.
But, I mean, I'm just saying, we have a choice, I mean, not everything can be the top priority,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're left to see that athletics are a higher priority than increasing
No.
our math proficiency.
No.
Well, that's where we put our dollars though, right?
No, and that, I mean, that's to sustain our programs, to provide a well-rounded experience for students.
Mm.
So I wouldn't
Because
pit one
our
against the other.
our technology budget is 809,000,
Mhm.
which is just a little bit higher than our athletics. I don't know. I guess where I'm getting to here is, I understand sports are important. I get it. I just wonder how important they are. And we talk a little bit about pay for play, but I think we spend a lot of money on our athletic program. And John brought it up, and he asked for a trend of, which is more than 2 years of data, but a trend of where we're going with our athletics program. 2 years, I mean, it doesn't give me enough information to qualify as a trend. But I think we spend, I guess we value that pretty highly, so.
What are you proposing for a technology increase this year?
Is it 115 or 1?
117, that's right.
117.
So you're proposing a $117,000 increase in technology budget and a $5,000 increase in athletic budget. To me, it sounds like they're balancing the two. It's just I kind of went down that same path and I kind of tried to do the math in my head. I hear what you're saying, I just don't know that I think that they're only spending it on athletics. I was surprised to see $750,000. So it's more than I expected.
I have a question on that total, maybe Jeff or Mariana.
We can give you the.
Yeah, can you break that down a little, you
Sure.
know, coach stipends and
So-
transportation and equipment and other
Yep.
related?
Yep, so we have sorry. So there's, in the 1920 budget, I'll give you that number, and I can send this off to everyone too, that's not a problem. So for the 1920 budget, where I'm estimating $459,125 for stipends between high school and middle school. There's a small amount at the middle school for sports. Game officials at the high school, $78,660. We have an athletic trainer contract, so it's a contracted service, that's $24,150. There's transportation of $89,000. Dues, which is, I believe, the CIAC dues, don't quote me on the organization, but I think that's what it is, that's $25,200. There's some equipment for $38,000. Electricity, which is the lights at the, for the track, which is quite honestly, it's it's on for not just sports, but throughout the day, for walkers and so on. And that's about $20,000. Yep, and then we have various repairs of $12,386. And then we have a .8 secretary that services athletics for $26,740.
I'm sorry, the second number, 78,000. The first number was for stipends, the second number
Oh, the
was
second
for
number for game officials?
officials.
Yep.
Thank you.
So there's definitely a lot of moving parts to any athletic program. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot going on.
Of the sports that that you pay for, which has the largest expense?
Probably say football. I would
Probably.
say. Football.
I would say football without looking into it, because that we buy the
Yeah.
equipment is supplied by us as our.
Now, after every game, what happens to the uniforms?
Oh, they're stored for
They-
the next.
They get cleaned first.
Right.
I know that.
By who?
But we're-
Then they get stored for
Where-
the next year, yeah.
They were sent out to somebody.
Shoulder pads and everything gets
I
stored.
know,
yeah.
well, my father-in-law did that
Oh, okay.
years ago. That's why I'm asking you, where do you send them?
I don't know. I have no idea where we send them.
The
yeah.
school pays for it though, right?
Yes, yeah, that equipment.
Yeah, but during the season, the parents
Oh,
Oh, they,
clean
yeah.
the
they-
uniforms, right?
Exactly,
I mean,
yes,
and-
yeah. We
Oh,
don't-
that's what I'm asking. Who cleans the uniforms
Yeah, the
between the
parents.
games? The parents
Oh,
or the?
parents.
the
Oh, yeah,
parents.
parents. Yeah, we don't, yeah, we don't want any part of that.
Well, you never know. I don't know how it works.
It's not a collegiate program.
Yeah, they smell the locker room good during the
Oh,
season.
God.
Okay, let me ask you this on cheerleaders. How young do you go
Easy now, John.
for cheerleader uniforms?
Well, it's a freshman through senior program.
Would it be below high school?
No, we don't have a cheerleading program at the middle school.
Oh,
No?
No, it's rec. Yeah, that would be rec. That would be park and rec paid for. We don't have anything that
Okay,
comes out
so
of
it's
our.
only high school.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It was the reason I asked that, you just answered,
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's park and rec.
which I won't get into.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Any other questions about item 16? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 17, administrative salaries. I think the answer is, it is what it is. Is there any questions about item number 17? All right, question number 18. Other ways of decreasing security cost. So, since this was my question, I didn't find this answer to really kind of talk about some of the things that we talked about, which was last year you wanted an increase in salary or an increase in budget for higher quality salary or training, a higher quality security staff, X guards, X whatever else. And then this year you said you want to add more people and they all wanted to be this higher quality security staff. You can't augment that staff with some lower cost staff.
Well, same quality this year as last year. You were just talking about same
So,
quality.
so in the past I had some greeter like Walmart.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
now you're gonna add trained people, and my
No,
question,
We've had that. That's what we've had in place.
for this year
And last year.
and last year.
The year before that, so 3 years ago, those were our.
I'm old,
readers.
time gets kind of drifty
So,
after a
yeah,
while.
Yeah. So it was last year.
So
and this year.
my question is, as you say, well, okay, but sometimes somebody has to escort somebody here, there, or the other place. So now the new people that you're adding, which are the redundant people to cover somebody that's not there, why do they have to be the skilled level? Why can't they be the greeter level? Why can't, I mean, why do you, it just seems to me like we've taken something that we never had before, and now we're getting high grade, and then we're augmenting it with high grade, and we're just kind of, I struggle sometimes when we do without something for a long time, and we never needed it, and
Yeah.
once we have it, it's like, oh, we need more of it. And it's not unique just to the security guards. I think we all do this in our life. It's the first time we get something, it's like, oh, I need more, more, more. And it just feels to me like we're putting a lot of money into security. Feels to me like there can be some lower cost security guards to work along with the higher cost security guards, if it's just to replace somebody when they're escorting somebody or to and fro.
Well, and I wouldn't say the escorts happen if you're talking to somebody from the community, coming in. Escorts are minimal in that sense. There's more sometimes escorts with students who might have having a behavioral issue of some sort. I think just that where we are in time and place with visitors coming into our building, people shouldn't be left alone to just wander through the building. So
No.
we've really eliminated that, worked to eliminate that practice.
Yes, also I'm proposing is that when you have these two people at the door, and one's a, ex-guard at the prison or whatever, and the other one, the secondary person, can be a greeter level person, and then when you do have that rambunctious student that needs to be escorted somewhere, the trained guard can escort him where he has to be escorted to, and the greeter level person can continue to do the greeting and buzz people into the building. That's, to me, it seems like a more cost-effective way
Different
to do it.
skill levels.
Because now you're
Cost-
talking about a
different pay
backup,
rates.
a redundant person. He doesn't have to be the high-paid person. He can be a lower-paid person.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
So
yeah,
that's where that question was trying to go to, is I don't know why you're adding more high-trained people. I would think you can augment with lower-trained people.
I have a question in that regard. As I recall, the person you're looking to hire would be in, security-wise, would be in the administration building because Coastal Connections is moving there. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's one, yeah.
So can you describe the level of need in that way? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd equate it to, you know, the high school, the job responsibilities will vary. I mean, you got two pieces to that too. I mean, you've got community members who sometimes, we've had some trouble in the past with community members trying to get into our building. I think having somebody of a higher caliber understanding and can deal with issues of that nature is important. That's one side. And the other side is, you know, the student component, and making sure we have somebody there to support students. Maybe a student who could be struggling, having an issue, behavioral, whatever it might be.
And
That's
the
that side
ages,
too.
Jeff, of those Coastal Connection students, we're at the high school.
Yes, 9th through 12th
Yeah,
grade.
so we're
yes.
not, it's not a, 7-year-old.
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no.
Alrighty.
Any other questions on question 18? Okay, question 19 was also mine. And again, that's just kind of, I understand that the desire for technology. I think sometimes we get a little too dependent on technology. I think we have awesome teachers and a lot of really good technology now. I understand you want to stay above. If I was the superintendent, I would try to stay above. I think we're doing awesome now, and I think that right now, with all the money that we're putting into brick and mortars this year, I'm hard pressed to understand why right now we have to add that. I don't see anything specific that you're looking for. I know you're talking about one-to-one apparatus or basically laptops, right, or
Tablets.
pads or something, so that everybody can have everybody's got a phone already. Not everybody, but no, not everybody. Everybody doesn't have the means to have the iPhone, but I don't know how I would want you to answer that, other than the fact that I don't feel the need for anything specific right now. And maybe you can communicate what it is that you don't have and what that advantage is. I just right now feel like
Do you want us to do that now?
if you have the ability to convey to me what specific it is that you think that,
Because this is a huge beast of an area that we are at a deficit when it comes to integration of technology in classrooms.
Yeah, so I think our biggest barrier is in particular at our high school and middle school, where basically we have, at our high school and most of our departments, we have one laptop cart for about 13 teachers to share across as an instructional model. So if you want teachers to be integrating technology to any degree of 13 teachers trying to schedule one cart of 26 computers at our high school. And then at the middle school in particular, at the Kiva, we have one laptop cart per Kiva, which we've invested in over time. We're still one Kiva short that we don't have. And our Kivas have anywhere between 70 to 80 students. So you have 4 teachers in one Kiva with one cart of 26 computers. The English teacher wants to use it as part of their instruction, but it's a week-long type project, and so now the other 3 teachers don't have access to those types of things. So we have maintained a lab-based instruction, but it's only one space in our building. So those are 2 particular sort of heavy hitters as far as barriers to trying to integrate technology into the experience. It's a lot of scheduling, and accessibility to those devices are certainly an issue for us.
that was the sales point for the Kivas, is that you'd have that commonality of common space.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Which-
so this $117,000 is all to buy laptops?
No,
No, so the
No,
$117,000 is
none.
just to give me a tech team for 12 months.
for the summer. That's just to.
Just give me
we have a
people.
We have a 10-month tech support team right now. They do nothing for us over the summer. That's to add them in for the months of the
Yeah.
summer because no work gets done over the summer where it's the best time to do it.
Correct.
So that's to make that. a
Correct. We've
Okay.
only had a 10-month contract with them.
So
now
this
we-
$117 isn't to buy any laptops or
hardware.
carts or anything
No.
like
No.
that? It's just to bring people in over the summer?
Correct. Correct.
Is-
Yep.
And when you gave your presentation previously, I recall that you mentioned the Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi connections in the high school. So does this